Hello, everyone. Welcome to Frankly Speaking Live with Frank Holzhauser. As you can tell, I am not Frank, and I'm also not his cohort, Dave Kanuk. So we're kind of throwing everybody off a little bit. My name's Jason Rainwater. You've seen me run shotgun a few times here. I'll actually be leading it here today. So I'd like to welcome someone very special to me, pro wrestling connoisseur, fellow actor in the Des Moines area, master of the improv, and our leader in crime, Dave Kanuk Jr.
Hey, thanks very much, Jason.
Hey.
Happy to ride shotgun with you and let you lead the charge today.
I gotta tell you, it doesn't feel awkward. It feels right almost in a way, but I shouldn't say that out loud. Because be like, am I usurping something right now?
I asked you if you wanted to lead.
I know
You're
you did.
not
I know.
doing anything
exactly.
wrong.
I remember when the text came across, like, oh, yeah, I'll definitely do that. Let's play around a little bit.
Yeah.
So, interesting week this past week. For the acting world, we lost Christopher Lee recently. If anybody doesn't know who Christopher Lee is, for the older crowd, more the connoisseur crowd, he played Count Dracula. For more of the Lord of the Rings sci-fi geeks out there, he was Sauron. Am I correct?
Yeah, it was Saruman and Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
And Count Dooku in Star Wars.
That's true. But even something closer to our heart in the pro wrestling world, we lost Dusty Rhodes.
The
on
American
same day.
Dream, brother.
He's the greatest of all time.
Yeah, that's a shame.
With his Lady Sapphire.
Yeah, it's too bad about Dusty Rhodes there.
And it was kind of almost a freak accident in a way. They say he had fallen in his home, and then just complication after complication started to pile up, and
It's really scary how a fall can really affect you when you get older. Back before I moved from Chicago, I was working at a really upscale retirement community up in Evanston, and there was a morning I came into work and we got one of the little alarms. Somebody, we had a little RF, little radio frequency alarms that everybody had in case anything happened. So I went up. Somebody had fallen. So she didn't seem hurt or anything. She just seemed, she just couldn't really get up, and we weren't allowed to help her up. So we had to call EMTs and everything, and EMTs came and helped her up. They just took her to the hospital for precautionary. She wasn't somebody who was really viewed as frail or anything like that, but complications piled up, and she passed away like a couple days later. I was in shock.
It's stunning.
I could not believe that was, the last conversation she had in that building.
Exactly. And for me, especially for that family there, they were finally coming together and bonding towards the later parts of, the journeys of their lives, so that was something I felt for. And then you saw the outpour of love, of course, that came across it.
Sure. How could you not love the Dream?
Absolutely. The greatest creative mind in pro wrestling in his time, Bookie and Nate, easy kid. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so it's a big loss. I think it's something that's felt across, even across past pro wrestling. You knew who Dusty Rhodes was.
Right.
You knew, even if you didn't watch wrestling, you could say, oh, yeah, the guy who wore the polka dots. Everybody knew Dusty Rhodes. My mother had the hugest crush on Dusty Rhodes when back in late 80s.
That's a little frightening.
It's a little frightening. But, she had strange crushes. There was Jesse James soon after that. I was like, where are you?
Jesse James.
Jesse James. Remember the motorcycle? He made motorcycles, basically, and he had that Monster Garage show.
Oh, that dude. Yeah. And then he cheated on what's-her-face?
Sandra Bullock.
Oh.
Yeah, because, he has great logic in his life.
Apparently.
So I thought we'd start off, we're going to kind of see where we lead off to, and I thought we'd start locally. Dave, I know that you saw this because this is one of the stories that you had shared with me, and I'm just going to read from here. Officer inside patrol car fatally shoots unarmed man, and this happened in Des Moines. A Des Moines police officer fired her service weapon through the rolled-up window of her patrol car on Tuesday night, fatally shooting an unarmed man said to be charging at her car, according to police. Ryan Keith Bollinger, 28 of West Des Moines, died at the scene from a single gunshot to the torso. Police and witnesses said he led two officers on a slow chase through northwestern Des Moines Tuesday evening that ended with Bollinger exiting his vehicle and coming towards the squad car. He was walking with a purpose, said Sergeant Jason Halifax of Des Moines Police said following a press conference Wednesday on the shooting. Now, I'll continue on reading here further, but I highlighted this because I want you to hold on to it when we get into discussion. He was walking with a purpose.
Right, that's illegal now.
Walking with a purpose. Senior police officer Vanessa Miller, a 7-year veteran, fired the round that killed Bollinger. Miller was assisting senior police officer Ian Lawler, also a 7-year veteran, in the pursuit of Bollinger's vehicle after a bizarre confrontation involving an unrelated vehicle stop that Bollinger interrupted. Both officers are on administrative leave until the investigation is completed per the department policy, and the Department of Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation will assist the investigation. Halifax goes further into the grand jury, will evaluate the case, that the department is also conducting its own personal investigation. Another point I'm highlighting here, both Miller and Bollinger are white.
Okay. It sounds like the guy was just high on something.
It's possible.
It's very odd that he interrupts a traffic stop.
But it goes into further where he leaves the scene.
Right.
All right. The officer, Officer Lawler, was the one that actually made the stop. And then this gentleman, Bollinger, stopped, came out, and they said he was dancing in the streets or doing some sort of weird gesturing movements.
Sure. So he was whacked out on something,
exactly.
And then he obviously wasn't making good decisions. Instead of the cops going and trying to subdue him,
exactly. No,
they shoot him.
And we go further into the story. He drove away, and they went on like a 35-mile-an-hour car chase, which is, they said he was weaving in and out. But here's what was after that had happened, and he had stopped his vehicle, and the police had done a maneuver where they trapped the vehicle in, so you can't go anywhere. This is what happened. In a matter of seconds, Bollinger got out of his car and charged or walked with a purpose toward Miller's squad car. After he was a short distance from Miller's driver's side window, she fired one round, shattering the rolled-up window and hitting Bollinger in the torso. Police found no weapons on Bollinger or at the scene, and it's unclear whether Miller thought he was carrying something at the time. And again, this phrase, he made a very quick advance towards the car.
Now, didn't we just have a case in Iowa with the landlord who held that tenant at gunpoint because he walked with a purpose towards him? He held him at gunpoint, and then, that's now a whole big scandal that, oh no, he wasn't supposed to do that. He's supposed you have to feel like your life is in danger and make every attempt to get away from it. Obviously, they're not following the same criteria that they're holding us to, because she's shooting this. The window wasn't even rolled down.
And she shot from the driver's side window. Okay, somebody is advancing on your car. I understand that maybe that the glass is not bulletproof, or you feel that there's a danger, but I need to understand you are carrying a semi-automatic weapon. You need to assess when there's 2 police officers on site and someone is walking with a purpose towards you. Quite possibly the use of deadly force is not necessary at all.
Yeah, maybe he's coming up to say something. I don't know what he was going to say. I mean, like I said, the guy sounds like he was whacked out on something, but where, with the window rolled up, where is the fair warning that they're going to use deadly force?
Exactly.
There's no stop or else shoot. It's just bang, bang, bang. And that's the whole psychology behind these no hesitation targets and everything that they're using as training for police officers right now. They're training them to shoot at the drop of a hat.
Exactly. And this is what the department said when they asked that very question. Was the use of deadly force permitted at this moment? And they said the use of deadly force can take many forms. It all has to do with how an officer perceives a situation and how they feel at the time.
Because they're never wrong.
Exactly. There's not a hard, fast, this is when you shoot and this is when you don't. I'm sorry, there is a hard, this is when you shoot and this is when you don't. There was a gentleman that protested the hearing and said, why wasn't the use of a taser perhaps used?
Exactly.
Why wasn't the idea of stop advancing on my vehicle right now?
We couldn't get the taser deployed because the window was up. We didn't want to take the time to roll it down, so we just shot him dead.
Exactly. And I understand that you saw someone walking erratically towards you, or you feel that they're on drugs or something like that. But there are procedures in place for that altogether. And when you have 2 police officers on scene, and later on they discuss what was the actual call between the dispatcher, and this is kind of a breakdown. Here's what he goes over to the scanner. He said he pulled up next to me on my traffic stop and started running around the highway. Then he jumped back into his car, taking off. At that point, they follow him. About 45 seconds later, Miller reported they had crossed Douglas Avenue going about 35 miles per hour, weaving all over. Lawler stated that the suspect was probably in his 20s or 30s. Lawler adds that the driver might be 1096, which is code for mentally ill, or 1055, which is a drunk driver. another 40 seconds, they all stop at Urbandale Avenue. That's when Miller states, looks like we're going to turn around. Whoop, heading back northbound. That's when Bollinger made his U-turn. 20 seconds of silence happens. The dispatcher asks again, were they still running or pursuing? There's silence. At about 10:20, Miller said she was trying to take one into custody. Remember, she's still in her vehicle. There's no taking into custody taking place. There's been a stop. 7 seconds later, Lawler reports shots fired. We need rescue. We got a white male torso, and I'm not sure what the injuries are.
So she obviously lied on the dispatch that they're trying to take him into custody.
Yes. They report that it was an officer-involved shooting, but the police are okay. The dispatcher asks, did an officer fire a shot, or did the suspect? There's 6 seconds of silence, and the male officer responded, officer involved. So there was not even a direct answer to the question. Was it the officer that filed or the suspect? The officer fired or the suspect? Officer involved. Officer involved in what?
Maybe that officer who responded was just in shock that this chick just up and shot the guy.
But here's the thing: have we heard from them? They're both on administrative leave. He didn't do the shooting, but understand. I mean, if he was in shock, where was he at the point? Was he still in his vehicle? Was he out? Was there a danger of him being injured?
Right.
Was there anything like that happening? But that doesn't sound like what was going on. This sounds like straight up a guy walking to the car. I feel you're in my presence. Bang.
Well, yeah. How reckless is it to shoot a gun in a car with the window rolled up like that? I mean, that's absolute recklessness.
And there are, in police academies, they train officers how to shoot from a seating position inside the car. They do. But it's, quite honestly, if you're in the car, you have not assessed your situation at all. All you have done is known that this person's driving really erratically and they stopped. What do I do next? Mm-hmm. I should get out of my vehicle and confront or find out what's going on. That never happened. There was no pretense of thought to think other than pull my gun, I'm in danger.
Yeah, it sure doesn't seem like it. And again, that's that instinct that's being trained. And officers, of course, should be able to defend their lives if their lives are in danger, but it's obvious now that they're not in danger, at least in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, but this leads to what's happening in every police department across the nation now. It is now trained to reflex, shoot first, we'll figure out everything later.
Right.
You know,
right.
And that's what leads to a police state. When you are shooting at the very nature of, he was walking towards me with a purpose. That is a dangerous situation now. Mm-hmm. What happens when it becomes he was jaywalking with a purpose? That's a dangerous situation now.
He failed to acknowledge my look.
Yes, he failed to acknowledge to give me the proper courtesy. Well, I'm sorry, guess what? That in itself is a police state.
Exactly. And you know, we accuse these leaders in other countries like Assad, who's not a great guy, but we accuse them of human rights abuses when we've got the same human rights abuses here. We're arguing that, you know, cops can shoot whoever they want, we can torture whoever we want, we can nab citizens off the street and throw them in a gulag without any fair trial or representation. That's what the National Defense Authorization Act entitled the president to authorize back in 2012. Lindsey Graham getting up there on the Senate. We say when they ask for a lawyer, I'm going into Dusty Rhodes. But he argues, when they ask for a lawyer, we tell them, you don't get a stinking lawyer. Imagine that in a more pixie voice of Lindsey Graham.
Exactly.
But we're taking on the same things that we've always looked down at other countries for doing. So how can we have that moral authority to be able to lead the world anymore? We can't.
We'll discuss that right after the break here. You're watching Frankly Speaking Live.
Concept Studios. This is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
The only way we come to know the Saviorship of Jesus Christ is by bowing and acknowledging that He is Lord and King over all the earth.
Jesus Christ died on a cross, paid the penalty for our sin, and by repenting of our sin and accepting Him by faith, what He did for us, we are forgiven.
Salvation is not a combination of faith and works. Salvation is by faith alone in God.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Boom, boom, bang, bang. Lie down, you're dead.
All right, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Live. We survived the first segment.
I think we
with me
excelled
heading
at the
it.
first.
That was, I'm telling you, I'm just like, we're over the hump.
Once you get that first one under your belt, it's all smooth sailing after that.
It's like now I'll never fall off the bike. So we were coming back from the break. Before we get back into everything, if you want to call in and discuss anything with the two of us, please feel free to call us at 244-0077. Or if you're outside of Des Moines, what's wrong with you? Area code 515-244-0077 if you'd like to discuss a few things with us. So going out from our discussion here about the police officer and the shooting and the leading to a police state, which will further lead into what is called now federal neighborhood engineering. There's a story out there called Obama to Regulate Diversity in White Suburbs. HUD effort to house poor called federal neighborhood engineering. President Obama is pressing forward with regulations to diversify wealthy neighborhoods, and critics of the idea haven't been shy, calling out the idea as ridiculous and an irrational way of advancing the White House's own vision of a utopian society. The rules coming from the Department of Housing and Urban Development could withhold block grants to communities if they don't build enough so-called affordable housing in wealthy neighborhoods. The Hill reported. This is a story WND reported nearly a year ago after the affirmatively furthering fair housing rules showed up at the Federal Register as a result of Obama executive order. The grant dollars could also be used to make improvements in poor areas by providing libraries, groceries, parks, and schools. HUD is working with communities across the country to fulfill the promise of equal opportunity for all, a spokesperson for the federal agency said. The Hill reported. The proposed policy seeks to break down barriers to access to opportunity in communities supported by HUD funds. And civil rights people are cheering. Debbie Goldberg, vice president of the National Fair Housing Alliance, said the country has a history of putting affordable housing in poor communities, and this regulation would rectify that perceived bias. But not all see the idea as feasible or palatable. American citizens and communities should be free to choose where they would like to live and not be subject to federal neighborhood engineering at the behest of an overreaching federal government, said Representative Paul Gosar, Republican, Arizona, who's leading up a House effort to block the rules. WND has was the first news organization to expose the coming new HUD rules in a July 2014 article, which detailed how the rules would be used not only to promote racial quotas in white suburban neighborhoods, but also to force communities to house the nation's burgeoning population of new immigrants. Another critic, Heritage Foundation fellow Hans von Spakovsky, said the regulations should be yet another way for Obama to inject race into a policy discussion. It's a sign that this administration seems to take race into account on everything, he said to the media outlet reported. The regulations are due this month. In order to qualify for the grant money, interested cities would have to look at their community's patterns of segregation and devise plans to counter them. The Hill reported the regulations would impact up to 1,250 local governments around the country. So, talking into our police state and also discussing into our need of our federal government to know every thought, to know every rule, to know where you're at, to not let you decide where you can be living by your choice. And this has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with, racism in any way. It is to make sure that everyone is put into the proper box that you are politically correct.
Right. It's social engineering. I mean, people have the right of free association. When you make a good income, you want to live in a better area. You don't want to live in the ghetto, with all the other people. And that's kind of a terrible thing to say. You want to say all people are equal and all people are created equal, but all people don't end up equally.
No.
Some people carry themselves with a bit more class than other people. And when you are carrying yourself with more class than other people, you don't want to live amongst those who don't carry that class, because don't those poor communities, don't those harbor a higher crime rate? If you're more successful, you don't want that success to be stolen from you. So you go and live amongst more successful people such as yourself. But now we can't do that because that doesn't fit in with the utopian vision of the communist Obama regime.
And HUD is one of the most corrupt. These programs to put into like low communities where they put affordable housing and they build homes or whatnot are the most corrupt within the mortgage world because they can be so used in another way. I can come in and buy 4 houses and then I sell them for, say, $1.5 million to an investor. And that investor can clog everything going into that house. Oh, there's delays because of the crime in the community. There's delays because I can't find subcontractors to come in and help work in these neighborhoods. They're not comfortable with doing that. And I can walk away with every bit of that cash.
Right.
And nothing is improved in that community. So the idea that you would go into an affluent community that's well off, that is in the black, or, to go into financial terms, doing well for themselves, to say to them, I am now forcing you to go to what I think your city should look like. I want it to be this way. I know you've been happy and you're doing well and your community's loved and people want to be in your community. You're the place that people want to go. Well, because of that, I want to make sure that people can go there.
So we're going to tear it down.
We're going to tear it down. I know you've done great. Good for you. Well,
it gets back to you didn't build that mentality of the Obama administration and these cronies.
Not at all. I mean, and it's kind of ridiculous in a way for the federal government to come in and say, this is how you have to live. I'm trying to remember if there was a separation of powers created in a document that said, we don't infringe upon the rights of our people. And this is the same way, even in the neighborhood that they live in. I don't remember us eminent domaining everything out there on this planet. And that's what's happening right now to get this social order in place.
Well, they're trying to take control of every single aspect of life, whether it's where you live, who you live with, the health care that you receive, whether or not you can withdraw X amount of dollars from a bank. Pretty soon it's going to go with the driverless car technology. It's going to go to where you can travel. They want to tax you by the mile. So they're going to try and restrict travel through repressive carbon-based taxes because we got to save the planet, even though all of these models that have shown that the planet is falling apart are completely incorrect now. They want to control every single aspect of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like, where does this control freak mentality come from?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, the path of what our government goes down to is leading towards a socialist path. The true
absolutely.
socialist path, it was laid down by Karl Marx, is exactly what the United States is falling into, where we're denying ourselves our own liberty, or allowing a base to deny our own liberties because for the good of the cause, for the good of social order, for the good of our future, because everybody needs to get along, everybody needs to think the same way, everybody has to fit into that political correct box, because that's the only way we can survive. Well, I'm sorry, that is not the human race. And as much as they're trying, and I know that they have the capability to do it, which is to eliminate humanity in a way that we are no longer men, women of any kind. We are an androgynous being.
That's kind of what we hit on last week with the whole Bruce Jenner thing.
And it may seem small. It may seem small, the idea that HUD's coming in and wanting to make sure people can live in these neighborhoods, but it's not small. It's part of a larger whole. You know, and that's why I wanted to kind of touch on it. Be like, if I can't live somewhere without federal government infringement, then where's my freedom at all?
Well, they don't believe in it. I mean, look at who these people idolize, who they hung out with. Obama, raised by Frank Marshall Davis, who was a communist propagandist. You remember the former White House spokesperson, Jay Carney?
Yes.
One of the magazines went into his house and did like a little feature on him. Oh, he's the wonderful, trendy, wonderful guy. In his kitchen, he's got old pieces of communist propaganda, like not communist style propaganda, actual communist propaganda hanging in his kitchen. You've got all these people who talk about how Mao Zedong was their hero and all this, and the guy killed 60 million of his own people.
Che Guevara.
Yeah, Che Guevara. You know how he was such a wonderful guy.
Oh, he's so wonderful. That's why he's on T-shirts and everybody loves. He's like, well, he was like, come on. I mean, he was a hero of those people. Like, no, he wasn't. He was a murderer.
Exactly.
He was an absolute murderer, and to fake that and put that on a T-shirt is ridiculous.
You know, I try to be. I try to be pretty tolerant, being in theater of other people's political views, as wrong as they are. And when I was, another Chicago story, I was working at a theater in Chicago. I was doing box office for this children's play for the theater company that I was a part of. And one of the cast members comes in. She's wearing a T-shirt, Mao. Freaking Mao on the T-shirt. I couldn't hold my peace. I could not hold. I was like, I told her, I was like, you are pretty gutsy wearing that shirt. Well, why? Well, I just think it's gutsy wearing the T-shirt of the face of some guy who killed 60 million of his own people. I wasn't on good terms with her after that. But it's where do you get off?
I would almost assume that you would be on better terms, because you would lay out. You have Chairman Mao sitting on your shirt. He killed 60 million people. You think you'd be bright enough, like, oh my God.
They can never be proven wrong. That's the problem. How do you like, though, that this just shows up in the register, though, this HUD ruling?
Yes.
It's rule, not even by executive order, but it's ruled by regulations. You've got all the EPA regulations and everything that are going out. That's how they're really taking away the freedom, is they're just putting it in the register, putting these regulations out there. Doesn't matter if a law's been passed. You know, getting to that, there were some stories out from the past couple of weeks. This week, the NRA was saying that gun blogs and videos, web forums are threatened by new regulation that they're doing just by rules. So basically, if you talk about certain aspects of firearms on forums or magazines and everything, nope, that's going to be illegal. It's not illegal by an actual law,
right? But it's illegal by this permit.
Exactly.
That we're gonna mandate.
So they're regulating the speech, and that's. I don't want to get too far off of your track here.
No, I mean, it fits into the track, because this is just another example. Even though this is only affecting 1,250 communities, they said, well, guess what? That's a sample size across the United States.
Exactly, and that's what they want to do. Here we go. This latest regulatory assault, published in the June 3rd issue of the Federal Register, again, is as much an affront to the First Amendment as it is to the Second. Your action, blah, 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 blah. Let's see here. Trying to get it. Gunsmiths, manufacturers, reloaders, and do-it-yourselfers could all find themselves muzzled under the rule and unable to distribute or obtain the information they rely on to conduct these activities. They're updating regulations governing international arms sales, State is demanding that anyone who puts technical details about arms and ammo on the web first get the okay from the federal government or face a fine of up to $1 million and 20 years in jail. So you can't put any technical information up there or else it's $1 million or 20 years in jail. So that, I think, is going into the UN agreement on small arms that we signed on to.
This is easy to go after because if you own a gun store or if you sell ammunition of any kind, you have to follow liabilities that come down from federal regulations. Gunblog doesn't have to do that. If you're just blogging about a weapon, you're not doing anything that says, I'm a criminal. You're really not. But guess what? Now I'm going to make sure that you know I feel that you're a criminal because you're blogging about weapons, whether you are responsible or not.
And Congress doesn't want to do anything about
Congress
it.
doesn't want to. So, yeah, we're all being social engineered away out of our lives. We are going on to our next break. We are watching Frankly Speaking Live. We'll see you after.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fix them problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking Live. I'm Jason Rainwater, campaign manager to the candidate David Canute. So, he leads the way every once in a while.
I'm running for mayor of your hearts.
244-0077. 244-0077 if you'd like to call in. 515-244-0077 if you're outside of Des Moines. We do have a call.
Oh, yeah.
So we're looking forward to this one. We have a Frank on the line.
Yeah, that would be El Franco.
Hey.
Hey, Frank, how's it going?
Let me turn my speakerphone off. I think it's causing some backlash.
Come on, Frank. You're an old pro. You should know about this.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, didn't know if you guys had mentioned the potential trade deal that the Democrats are shooting down. They're trying to shoot down with Obama.
So one logical thing that they've done.
Yeah. Well, just getting back to your previous conversation after listening there for a while, that's what happens when you allow central planners to plan your cities for you. Mm-hmm. And that's what you'd get if you get the likes of Ed Fallon and Elizabeth Warren helping design your neighborhoods and your societies. Is you're going to be growing gardens in 4x4 square gardening pads, and you're going to be living in 10 by 10 by 10 housing. And if you've never seen that story, it's a pretty cool little story. This is actual housing that they're planning for the future, that you live in a 10 by 10 by 10 module.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. It's like these mega cities, and everybody's going to be stacked basically in egg cartons, one on top of each other. You're not going to be able to travel outside.
It's literally Judge Dredd recreated.
It is.
Because you are living in those mega cities where you are basically potted out, and that's how they identify you. You're from Pod 3A.
Not to be caught 25 miles from your home.
Exactly.
I guess.
Exactly. Well, where they're getting that from that's from the UN agreement called Agenda 21, which spelled out how they want to re-diversify and rewild a lot of the U.S. and everything, and basically how they wanted the planet to be. So we are moving in to that Agenda 21, to that Agenda 21 set, basically.
Sweden has those communities.
Mm-hmm.
They're not 10 by 10 pods, but they are broken down into square footage with homes. They are encouraged to grow a garden. Actually, you pay less in tax if you grow a garden in your home.
That's great.
Which is fine, but it is federally regulated.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's living in this basic salt box with their own patch of grass. It's X feet by X feet.
Mm-hmm.
X meters by X meters.
Well, that is,
so I mean, but it's fitting into that.
I've seen some miraculous things in these 4x4 gardens, and I'm not against maximizing growing space in the world, but here's the idea that Ed Fallon has been on this vendetta since I've been listening to him to crowd you onto mass transit, force you into riding bicycles, while the rest of the world, China, the biggest selling thing, they're building autobahns, they're building high-speed rail, they got their nuclear programs is full bore.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing, it's a status item over in China to own. It's a Hummer, H2 Hummer, and a couple years ago, everybody had to get rid of their Hummers because they weren't worth what they had been sold for.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole time that was going on, China was eating them up. And, so while the rest of the world is trying to get off of bicycles and into cars, Ed Fallon is having us get out of cars and get onto bicycles. So they want you crammed in. They want you, they want to regulate you. They want to govern you. They want to control every aspect, area of your life.
Right, and to Ed Fallon, to speak to Ed Fallon, I think he is not meaning this. I don't think he's reading from Agenda 21 documents. I think he's just a well-meaning dupe.
Yes, we've agreed on that before. I don't know if you guys have talked. I didn't know if you had a show last week. I did get tuned in.
We did. It was fantastic. Where were you?
Okay. Did you have a chance to talk about the potential trade deal?
We did. We did. We actually covered it 2 times. We covered it twice.
Let me put in my 2 cents on it and get your thoughts on it. I mean, obviously, this all kind of happened. I won't say it all happened, but it kind of just combusted under the Clinton administration, and we got a president or potential president candidates want to take us back to the 90s. But basically, this NAFTA, the GATT, WTO, all this stuff was handed to Clinton on a silver platter by a ever willing Congress to basically give away one of the 5 things that the Constitution commissions them to do. Trade deals is one of the main 5 responsibilities of Congress, and they basically gave that away to Clinton, and he basically bailed out Mexico City, with fast track, no congressional authority basically whatsoever. And now the Democrats are wanting to stand up, and they're wanting to have a little bit of backbone and shoot down this trade deal. Now you got guys like Ed Rendell, the ex-governor of Pennsylvania, on there just going, man, I'm all for this trade deal, and I'm all for this, what have you. But here's the problem. What we need to differentiate on trade is I'm all for free trade, okay? We need free trade in the world, but we need free/fair trade. Because what we inevitably end up doing is we always engage in these deals, and it always we end up with the crap end of the stick. Somebody devalues their currency, floods our market with cheap goods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. China, it reneges on those deals all the time, and it just puts us at a severe disadvantage of a severe trade imbalance. So what's your guys' thought on basically, do you think the whole deal should be shot down, or do you think we should just get in there and make it so, hey, we love free trade, but let's make it fair trade?
Oh, I love free trade. I love free trade. What we don't need to do is eliminate free trade. What we need to eliminate is tariffs. We are at 500% tariffs with our partners in trade. That's why we are more the consumer than we are sending or exporting our goods out. That's what would be good for all trade, is the elimination of a tariff. And which, with a tariff, it's just like a tax, basically. But when we're paying out the wazoo on tariffs because we want to import goods and we can't export goods, that's where our problem is. It's, free trade's great, but free trade doesn't work when you regulate every bit. You regulate every chance of profit, any chance of bringing in anything good to the country for ourselves. And it's basically right now what this agreement is, it's world government.
Exactly.
It's what it is. It's world government. I can't put it any plainer. I mean, I can talk about tariffs all day, but this trade agreement, which no one is allowed to look at other than going into a dark room, maybe 1 or 2 assistants. You can't take pictures. You can't
take any notes,
write any
anything.
Notes down. You can't do anything in that
Sandy
manner.
Berger might be able to get you.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Sandy Berger might get it.
The problem may be able to slip in and get you a picture.
The problem with the TPP is that it has really not a whole lot to do with actual trade. To Jason's point, it is about integrating the Asian Union in with the North American Union that was signed in by Vicente Fox, Felipe Calderon, and George W. Bush back in 2005, which created the one North American trade union right here and basically did away with that sovereignty. So it's about step by step integrating all of these different trade zones until you do have interlocked one world government. But this TPP covers so much more than just actual trade. It covers everything from, the internet and free speech on the internet. It basically gives Obamacare to the entire world. It covers firearm regulations. It covers immigration. It's sovereignty killing non-legislation. It's a sovereignty killing suicide, basically.
And the entities that are lobbying for this to be passed through our Congress is not even our own citizens.
Right.
It is foreign nations using American lobbyists. Tom Daschle's firm is working with Japan to get this passed. Japan really wants TPP to be passed so that we can go into global governance. But that's the thing. Foreign nations are leading the charge for us to pass our own style of trade.
We don't need this for free trade.
Well, supposedly we got Hillary Clinton out there bartering a program with some company that some big hotshot flies Clinton to in Russia, and Russia ends up owning a company that is providing half of our potential plutonium supply. So when we got our Secretary of State out there freelancing and making her own deals, let's just say that China's the 900-pound gorilla, 9,000-pound gorilla in the room, which it is. They need us for a trading partner because we're the ones buying their goods. and they send their stuff in here. They want it. They want it cheap. They devalue their currency. They flood our market with these cheap goods, and then when we send something and export something over there, it gets tariffed the crap out of, like Jason is talking about.
Right.
So I guess what to address your point is, I think Jason agrees with what I'm saying. I want free trade, but somehow it has to be free/fair trade.
Well, this deal isn't going to do that, and those tariffs that are coming over from the Chinese side, this all goes back to deals that were worked out through Henry Kissinger back during the Richard Nixon administration, when they set up the Chinese basically to take over the manufacturing of the world economy that they were setting up. And that's when you started seeing the flow of American manufacturing jobs heading on over to China.
And exactly to your point there. And that's what it was. It was cheap, free labor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were like, well, this will open up trade. We'll use their labor to bring in our goods. Well, the thing is that it became so disparate in a way what would be free trade. It wasn't trade. It was a barter. You will pay for everything that you need to manufacture on our end, which was basically what Kissinger had done.
Mm-hmm.
The United States will pay for every bit of your manufacturing, and you'll gain from it. In return, you're going to give us every bit of good that you create to us. Well, the problem is it became so one-sided that China lifted itself up from what people thought, oh, they're just a bungling superpower, to a true commercial marketed superpower.
Hey, Jason, before I forget, let me revert back to the previous conversation for just a second on the central planners, and you was mentioning something about somebody going in and buying up houses and whatever. Did you either of you guys hear, I think Rush Limbaugh, I'm sure he's not the one that investigated, but I heard on his show a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like it was him that was saying, that Elizabeth Warren has made her wealth flipping houses. Did either of you guys know that?
I haven't heard that, but
this big phenomenon we had a number of years ago on TV where people were going in and scooping up houses for nothing and trying to flip them into mega bucks. This is how so we're going to come out and we're going to condemn Mitt Romney for scarfing up for being a vulture capitalist, and we're going to jump on Mitt Romney for going in and buying companies and either trying to get the companies on their feet or liquidating them into bankruptcy court. But in essence, Elizabeth Warren, who come out and she's all over Romney, and they're just beating the crap out of Romney, she's basically in the essence the same thing. She's a venture capitalist.
Well, everything works for you if you have a D after your name in Congress. If there's anything in that parentheses that is not a D, you are in trouble.
This is true.
You're watching Frankly Speaking Live. We'll be back after the break. We got Frank with us. We'll be right back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
that's the music right there.
Slow jams.
All right. Welcome back to Frankly
Bringing it home.
Speaking Live. I'm Jason Rainwater, sitting here with Dave Kanuk. If you'd like to call in, it's 244-0077, 515-244-0077 if you're outside the Des Moines area. We had a good discussion there.
Yeah.
In the last segment. And that'll lead us into our next one. I wanted to touch on this one because I just wanted to show the hypocrisy of our government.
Mm-hmm.
And in the largest way I could possibly think. So this article here that I have, it's G7 Summit. President Assad could face exile in Russia, and the West's plan to tackle ISIS in Syria. President Assad could be forced into exile as part of a deal between Russia and the West to combat the rise of ISIS in Syria under plans discussed at the G7 Summit in Germany. Remember that ISIS is a CIA creation. Somehow we are now going to combat our own creation by getting rid of somebody who was combating our creation.
We were never at war with Eurasia.
No, never.
Except when we were at war with Eurasia.
Despite continuing tensions with Russia over Ukraine, diplomatic sources at the summit suggested that there was new common ground between the West and Moscow on the need for a diplomatic solution to the impasse in Syria. It is now an impasse. It's not a war. Not at all. It's an impasse. It's a police action.
Not a U.S.-sponsored overthrow.
The deteriorating situation on the ground, both in Syria and Iraq, dominated Sunday night's leaders' dinner at the Shlosh Elmo resort, which, while it was also figured in bilateral talks between David Cameron and President Obama. Downing Street said after the meeting, while significant problems remained, the potential for a deal, which would see some sort of limited regime change in Damascus, was greater than it had been for more than a year. So basically, the discussion of going, there's only a leadership change in Damascus. It's not to get rid of Bashir Assad's party or his regime in any way. It's to exile him into Russia and put somebody in place to run it as a puppet government with his still regime in place.
Exactly.
While ISIS is still fighting.
And what's our track record been on these regime changes?
Horrible.
Exactly.
We are 0 for 50.
Look at what we did in Egypt back a few years ago when we threw out Mubarak and then brought in the Muslim Brotherhood to run things.
And it was one of we're like, this is a stroke for democracy. This is a victory. The Muslim Brotherhood's not awful in any way. And then the Egyptian military had to come back in and overthrow a second government.
Right, after the largest political protest in human history, millions of people in the street on July 4th, what was it, 2013?
Yes.
Yeah, 2013, which was pretty ironic, I thought. And and I've always used this point that you can tell where Obama stands because he heralded the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt as a great move for democracy. Yet when the people actually got out and spoke and said, we can't have the Muslim Brotherhood in here, they're terrible, get them out, they said nothing. They were absolutely silent.
He talked about his bracket.
He talked about his bracket.
His NCAA bracket. That's what was being talked about the entire time. And that's not the only time he's ever gone and used that sort of resort. Anytime that he doesn't want to discuss something because he doesn't think it's real, or if I ignore it, it's not real for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Let me talk about my bracket. You know, I want to make sure the basketball tournament's going well. But the reason I bring it up is just because we have another article here that I got from InfoWars where it says CIA admits to creates terrorism. And the reason it steps into this is because shows the track record of how horrible we are.
Sure.
At regime change or using some sort of third party in a way to push our policy. You know, and it was discussing with John Brennan. He's the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he was on Face the Nation. And Brennan said this as an admission, even though he might not have meant it as one, it was, I think the president has tried to make sure that we're able to push the envelope when we can protect this country. But we have to recognize that sometimes our engagement and direct involvement will stimulate and spur additional threats to our national security interests.
That's a mild way of saying that we go in, radicalize these groups, turn them loose. We have some commanders at the top, but then we turn these nutsoids loose to run rampage across the country.
Policy change, new government.
And then we've got to step in to...
Exactly, we have to step in. And this is what left unmentioned by Brennan is the fact that CIA creates terrorism, and it's true. It is absolutely true. I mean, it creates terrorism from Al-Qaeda. It creates terrorism from the Dalai Lama. And if you don't think that the Dalai Lama is not a terrorist, you need to look at CIA reports that said the Dalai Lama was being used to front guerrilla forces into China.
What's he got under them robes
You're
anyway?
saying. And then
I've never heard that actually.
Actually, it's when the Dalai Lama was thrown from Tibet, what the Dalai Lama really wants, and this is getting out the point, but I really like to share it. The Dalai Lama wants to return Tibet to the priest caste system, which is the priests are the upper crust elitist group that gets all the wealth, all the food, all the respect. They are literally dictators in robes. That's what the priest caste is in Tibet. And the serfs, and they are called serfs in Tibet. They are left in poverty. They are left in sickness. They have no access to doctors. They have no access to the outside world. Their whole purpose is to grow food and create economy for the priest caste. That's what the Dalai Lama wants to return. And we sit here and we'll talk about China. China is an evil force, but understand, which evil do I want at the time here? Because China brought into Tibet education, healthcare, a form of government that actually lifted these people up. At the same time, they also had huge human rights abuse. There's the lack of freedom of religion. There is summary executions, but that was happening under the Dalai Lama as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know which one to go with. And that's what happens in a lot of these is that, well, they both suck.
Well,
what do we do? Well, let's create an issue from it all.
It's up to those people as a nation to rise up and decide what form of government they want. Freedom isn't something that can be given to a nation. Freedom is something that a nation has to rise up and find for itself. And if fate is with these people, then they're going to win, and that's the good guys can win. I mean, look at how this country was started. We went up against the largest military force known to man at that time, and we won because God, providence, fate, whatever you want to call it, was with us. So again, it's up to a nation to decide whether or not they're going to be free. And that's why this whole idea of, we're going to spread democracy to the Middle East. No, that is a stupid idea.
But I mean, these are some of the groups that we've lifted up and said they are going to be the force that leads them to freedom and democracy.
Exactly.
Okay, one of them is Al-Qaeda, another terrorist group. That includes ISIS, our documented CIA assets.
Mm-hmm. Well, before 9/11, we were using them in Bosnia.
Mm-hmm. The director of the National Security Agency under President Reagan, General William Odom, admitted as much when he said, by any measure, the U.S. has long used terrorism to realize foreign policy goals. Robert Gates, who was the director of the CIA under Reagan, George Bush Sr., the Secretary of Defense for George W. Bush and Obama, wrote in his memoir the CIA had a hand in building up the Afghan Mujahideen that would eventually become Al-Qaeda. So we created the group.
Absolutely.
We radicalized them to an unbelievable amount.
Well, the word Al-Qaeda was actually a shortened version of the Arabic word for database. Al-Qaeda means the base, and it was a shortened word for the database. And all Al-Qaeda actually was just a database of Mujahideen fighters who would fight the Soviets for money. And then when we had to prosecute the Blind Sheik for the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993, which has come out that the FBI actually helped cook up and fund, when we wanted to prosecute him, we wanted to prosecute him under RICO laws, so we had to prove that an organization existed. And so that's when Al-Qaeda came into the public lexicon. And then we used that as a monster, through 2001, as long as we could. And now we've destroyed that monster. It's come out of gas, and now we're using ISIS.
We can take this back into Libya itself. The CIA directed and funded the violent overthrow of the Libyan government. Libya was rife with terrorists now because after we came in and decided, okay, we need to overthrow the government, and say what you want of Gaddafi. Say what you want. But there was semblance of order in some manner or way that he had created there. And we came in, the CIA led the way to eliminate that government and make it a hot ground for every terrorist group to come in and try to create their own network to go out and create more terrorist units out around the world. And it's our fault. It's our fault.
It is. And the real danger is that they're going to use these people that we've wound up. They're going to place them here in America. They're going to get a tax going, and they're going to use that in order to restrict more and more of our freedom.
Exactly. Well, we're coming down to the end right here. I'd like to thank you for joining us here on Frankly Speaking Live. I'm Jason Rainwater, always with David Kanuke. Coming up next, we're going to have Wayne Carter and Faith That Works, so stick around. Wayne's got some really interesting topics coming up. We will see you next week or the next time we're ever here.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.
Take care.